conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the imprisonment of Tommy Robinson, a subject that has attracted huge amounts of social media comment, but until now, we've not been allowed to talk about it. I'm going to examine whether that makes sense in the modern 21st century or not. I'm also going to talk about the murdered Russian journalist. And we all woke to that news this morning. Oh, isn't this awful? This beastly Putin's out there killing everybody again. And then he turns up at a press conference this afternoon. Was this the most explicit case of fake news yet ever seen? But before I get to any of that, I'm going to talk about immigration. Oh, here he goes again, some of you will say. But actually, do you know something? I very rarely discuss this subject here on LBC. During the referendum, clearly, open borders, immigration, whether wages were being depressed, whether access to GPs had got more difficult, a growing population, these were very, very big parts of the whole Brexit debate. Since then, over the course of the last, and it's almost 2 years, the anniversary coming up in a few weeks, immigration has fallen as an issue in terms of national debate. Nobody wants to talk about it. Even those nasty Tories who backed Brexit and said we should control our borders, many of them are now actually openly celebrating the fact that immigration does not appear to be a big issue. One of the reasons for it, of course, is that UKIP is not the potent threat that it was in British politics, and UKIP did talk about immigration a lot, and they're not really posing that kind of threat anymore. A second reason, I think, is a lot of the public had thought, well, we voted Brexit, therefore the immigration problem is sorted. So it's gone down the agenda, and I get the feeling that actually the Labour Party, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives would rather we didn't discuss it at all. So we're told it's no longer an issue. Really? Well, a report out today by a left-wing think tank, Demos, they're very much on the left of centre, has asked a series of questions about immigration and about our social attitudes towards it. And the results are, I think, given that it's nowhere near the top of the pecking order in terms of what's being discussed, talked about, read about every day, the results, I think, are extraordinary. They show that nearly 71% of the population think immigration has divided communities where migrants have settled. This rose to 78% in areas that report having experienced large-scale migration. And interestingly, given that I'm talking more here about social factors than economic factors, and if you want to ring up and talk about wages, you can, but I'm really talking here about communities. I'm talking about how we feel about our country, what it represents, how we all get on. Because I also thought what was very interesting was that 55% of people in this survey said the government is doing too little to promote traditional British values, and that goes through schools and right through our life. So here we have a Westminster political class not discussing the issue at all. People like Boris Johnson now talking about amnesties for up to 750,000 illegal immigrants. Westminster, much of the mainstream media behaving as if this issue has disappeared. It not being debated very much, and yet, in terms of social attitudes, big majorities saying there is still a very real problem here. So, I want to know from you, has immigration over the course of the last 20 years harmed your community? Because 71% of people in this survey say that it has. And if you think this is absolute poppycock, Mr. Farage, it's actually benefited us. It's made us more diverse. We're happier. We're more united. And by the way, 9% of the opinion poll think Britain is more united as a result of it. If that's how you feel, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, actually, do you know what? It was always about numbers. Nigel, you said this for years. We've taken in too many people. We've not been able to integrate. That's what has led to us feeling more divided, and that actually our society has been harmed. And I'd back that up by saying that in the same opinion poll, 63% of people think Britain was a better place to live 30 years ago than it is today. So this does run very deep out there. But I also want to hear, particularly if you're a first-generation immigrant into this country, whatever part of the world you've come from, tell me, how does integration feel it's working to you? And would you perhaps agree or disagree with these figures that what's happened in the last 20 years has in fact overall been harmful? Forget economics. I'm not talking about economics. You know, I can say it's been bad. Somebody else can say it's been good. We can go all round the houses. This is not about money. It's about culture. It's about how we feel. So please, if you are a first-generation migrant to this country, how do you feel it's changed British society, for good or for bad? You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch us on Facebook. Mr. Zuckerberg has not yet taken any action against me at all as a result of our confrontation last week, even though he'd probably like to. And you can comment there too. And I'm going to do my absolute best not to give any opinion at this stage at all. And I'll save that for a bit later. I want to hear from you. Has immigration over the last 2 decades harmed your community? And if it has, tell me exactly how. Hussein is calling from Sutton. He's my first caller of the evening. Hello.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm a fan of Farage, okay? So I'm so sorry.
That's all right. So, come on, tell me your story.
Just simply, I'm a first immigrant in this country.
Yep.
20 years back, came into this country. Very much financially well off, but I'm not integrated. And I resent that in a sense that I think we just talk about different things. And for that reason, I think the integration is difficult.
And is that, Hussein, is that because you have found it difficult to integrate with your local community in Sutton and whether it's their pub culture or love of the Football World Cup or whatever it may be? Or do you feel perhaps that they've slightly resented you?
No, I think this resentment does happen, but not. It's more financial resentment. I think this country has I have a very unique perspective simply because I've lived in many other countries as well. And I have no connections in the UK before, like for family or something. I'm on my own. And I must admit, the biggest thing I find difficult is when people look at you as an immigrant.
Yeah.
They never look at your work. They never they look at your name. They look at your surname. They look at, when you're filling out forms, you have to say which ethnicity you belong to. When you apply for passports, it says where you're born.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Because people measure you based on where you've come from. Not what you know or what you've seen or what your experiences are.
And can I ask, Hussein, what work do you do?
I'm in finance, not financial services, but finance director for a company.
Right, okay. So you're doing pretty well. Life is good. But you don't really...
Yeah, money-wise, I have no issues.
Yeah, but you don't...
I earn somewhere else also. It's not like this is the only country you can make money in. But I think the biggest issue you have is everybody who is not, let's say, don't want to use the word indigenous, but who is not of a majority caste and color is looked at differently. Even when announcements are made about any positions, the first thing that is said is Mayor of London, born of a Pakistani immigrant, a bus conductor. Somebody on the MP, the first thing they would say is so-and-so, born in this country, born in another country. But
that's because they're trying to. But that's because they're trying to make a virtue of it. And I actually, in many ways, Hussein, I rather agree with you. We should stop actually saying people are so different because of their backgrounds. This is an attempt by much of mainstream media to try and present these things as being absolutely wonderful, where we frankly should just treat people as people. Hussein, do you understand, given your experiences, why up to 78% of people in some areas think immigration has harmed their communities?
I do, actually, and let me explain why also. I'm Muslim, and lately with the different things that have happened in the country. In Rotherham, for example,
Yep.
people don't talk about criminals. They talk about religion. They talk about individuals who have harmed. We don't talk about them. When did we last say the head of the financial services who did some bad things, and Madoff, when we lost $50 billion in the world, who said his religion? Nobody did that. They just said Madoff.
Yep.
It's not religious motivated. Criminals are criminals. They should be dealt with firmly, immediately, and that's it.
Okay.
And that's what's wrong with the country, actually. I think the first signs of good or bad things we see, we measure it in terms of ethnicity. And that should just stop.
And Hussein, I want to ask you one last quick question. Do you think that if we got a tighter grip on the numbers coming into the United Kingdom every year, that integration would become easier?
No, but I'll explain why. If you think about it, 20, 30, let's say 30 or 40 years back, a lot of people came into this country from different backgrounds. They were needed for whatever work was required in this country. Then over a period of time, the job requirement changed, and they all became jobless and on benefits. So vast populations became like that. The New World Order is going to change that again. So let me give you an example.
Hussein, well, I'm afraid I'm running out of time. I would just counter your point by saying this. 30, 40 years ago, net migration to Britain was running at 30,000 a year. Over the course of the last 5 years, it's been running as high as 1/3 Hussein, I've got to let you go. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC, and it's now 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
A campaign to secure a second Brexit referendum within 12 months and save the nation from what's termed immense damage by the philanthropist and financier George Soros. Lord Adonis, Labour peer and supporter of Open Britain.
All he's doing is giving his opinion as a private individual, as I am.
Well, a fairly influential individual, one has to be said. You know, credit to the man.
But we're all entitled to...
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With The Times. Be not just informed, but well informed.
Ever had your milk delivered? As much as you need right to your doorstep? Well, that's kind of how blood works too. If you really needed some, you'd expect it just to be there, wouldn't you? Enough for you or me, your kids, your mum, or your neighbour. But we require nearly 700 new donors every day to give a pint, just to keep the country going. Bleed for the things that matter to us all. Join us at blood.co.uk. Save a life. Give blood.
Are estate agents revolting? At eMove we are really revolting. We're revolting and revolutionising to create an easier and fairer way to sell your home. We're calling it an e-movement, combining the benefits and savings of online with real dedicated property experts at every step of your sale. Revolt with us. Join the e-movement. Visit emove.co.uk. Rated the UK's #1 hybrid estate agent on all agents.
OK, children, settle down. Thank you for bringing your pets in for Bring Your Pet to School Day. Megan, who is this delightful little ball of fur?
It's Treacle, my guinea pig, miss.
Adorable. And Alfie, who's this?
It's Ronaldo, my rabbit, miss.
What a darling. And what's in the wooden crate, Poppy?
Fluffy.
That's a very strong lock.
With a Land Rover Discovery, adventure can take you, well, anywhere. Never stop discovering. Search Land Rover Discovery. Land Rover, above and beyond.
It's in my hair, my eyebrows, it's even up my nose. They make painting look easy on the telly, but let me tell you, it's not. The wall looks like it's been finger painted by a giant child. Who's going to rescue this? Oh, relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Actual professionals who know what they're doing and don't leave the place looking like, well, my face. Now I can concentrate on the important stuff. Whispering peach or dirty mayonnaise. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious, adventurous, somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's the elephant in the room in British politics. None of our mainstream political parties are talking about immigration at all, despite the Brexit vote saying, let's get a grip, let's take back control of our borders. None of them want to do it. In fact, many of our very leading Brexiteers, like Boris Johnson, now want to have an amnesty for 750,000 illegal immigrants, and we're told it's okay. The Brits don't care about immigration anymore. Well, do you know what they do? And this piece of polling put out by the left-wing think tank Demos today showing that, 71% of people think that immigration has harmed communities, and that rises to 78% in areas that have had significant immigration. Shows you people still do care. And what fascinates me about this is not about money. And we can't go on measuring our success or failure as a society by GDP numbers. I'm getting pretty bored with that. This is about culture. It's about how we feel. So perhaps not surprising also in this poll, 55% say the government is doing too little to promote traditional British values, and 63% believe the country was a better place to live 3 decades ago than it is now. And another piece of evidence that backs this up, remember in the wake of the Windrush scandal, and the Windrush scandal, by the way, there was nothing deliberate about this. This was, an administrative mess-up. But it led to the phrase, hostile environment. Was the government creating a hostile environment for people who were not legally in this country? Now, that can mean, as in the case of Windrush, their papers weren't right. It could mean people willfully overstaying visas, or it could mean those people who are on lorries as we speak, coming under the channel or across it in a ferry. And there was a big political row in Westminster. It was awful that this hostile environment had been created. And yet Ipsos Mori polled this a couple of weeks ago, and 3 in 5 British people want the government's immigration policy to be as difficult as possible for illegal immigrants. So 3 in 5 of you think actually there should be a hostile environment for illegal immigration. But I'm asking you tonight to tell me, how has immigration in the last 2 decades harmed your community, or indeed made it better? I get on SMS, immigration is a huge issue and it still needs bringing under control. Well, it does. I'm not too sure Mrs. May thinks that matters much. Mass immigration will eventually destroy the existing culture, heritage and traditions of this country. Well, it doesn't have to, it seems to me, if we have a good level of integration. 30 years ago, I got on Twitter, I knew almost everybody in my street. We had a Jubilee Street party. We had a community, a culture, a local pub where we all put the world to rights. It's all gone, says Andrew. People like you, Nigel Farage, dividing the country, blaming all our problems on immigration. Well, that's very sweet of you to say so. I haven't attempted to do that now. Indeed, I never ever have. But, whatever I may or may not have done politically on this issue has not led to the fact that 78% of people living in areas of high immigration think this issue has harmed their communities. So I would say to you on Twitter, wake up and smell the coffee. Something has gone wrong here. Mustafa says many NHS workers are immigrants or second generation, so that's a positive. Yes, Mustafa, you can argue that's a positive, but I would also say to you, in many cases, we're taking nurses and doctors away from third world countries who probably need that medical care even more than we do. And why on earth we're not training our own people, I simply don't know. Let's go to Harrow on the Hill and speak to Manish. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points.
Sure.
One is to say that I think immigration has been a good thing for the country, but I wanted to also agree that I think now having some form of control with regard to immigration will keep the, how can I put it, the goodwill in the country. I think when I say goodwill, what I mean is just keep things as they are, because I think if we carry on with the basic maths of it, if we carry on with I think you said 400,000 net migration.
No, about a third of a million the big years have been, but certainly all of them for the last few years, over 250,000, Manish, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, eventually, I mean, that can't be controlled, and it will cause when people can't get appointments with their GP. I think you've mentioned all these points before, which I have to agree with.
But Manish, hasn't that happened already?
Well, I mean, I personally, I mean, I came here in 1970 as a 2-year-old, sorry.
Yeah.
And, the country's been great for my family. We've all, we've all had public education, comprehensive education. We've done very well. My father was the first generation migrant. He did very well. Lots of opportunities, for everyone. But I think now, I can see, even though I'm not seeing it myself so much, but what I'm hearing, things are changing. So I think hopefully Brexit, when it happens, I think, it will just bring things to a certain control.
Manish, I just want to pick you up on one point. You said that you felt immigration had been a good thing for the country. Do you think good thing economically or socially or both?
I think for the prosperity of the country, I think,
okay.
In terms of, in terms of progression, my community being a sort of Asian, Kenyan Asian background, most of my sort of colleagues and peers, we've all, managed to get a good education.
When you say manage your community, I presume you have a British passport?
Yes.
So why do you identify as being your community? Isn't that, in a sense, part of the problem of division? Why don't you, Manish, just identify as being British?
Yes, I mean, I take your point. I mean, when I say my community, I suppose it was growing up with my extended family and all the people I grew up with. And I do see myself as British, to be honest. I do see myself as British, and now I suppose my social circle and where I don't even think of myself as. And how can I put it, as an Asian British person.
But do you think, Manish, do you think too many people who live in this country do identify as being from or part of a community?
Yes, I do, actually.
Yeah,
I think, I work in northwest London, and the change in the environment, the change in the community has become very... There's a lot of East Europeans who've arrived there, and again, it's. I think there is a certain difference there in terms of them seeing themselves as British, or them seeing themselves as sort of economic migrants who are here for a little while, and then I think what my point is trying to keep it simple is that I think now there has to be some control.
No, well, Manish, I 100% agree with that. Where you and I would differ is I think we should have made that decision some years back. Great call. Thank you. Life is not as good as it was. We had more freedom. We had far less fear on the streets. Education was better. History was taught. And children were all taught to swim, says Graham in Leeds. Mohit is a brand new caller to this show, and he lives in Ilford. Good evening.
Hi there, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. So, Mohit, do you understand why these figures, well in the 70% of people saying they feel immigration has done harm to communities, do you understand why people feel like that?
Absolutely. I think majority of the callers or people who've been giving that kind of response to a survey may be talking from cities, inner cities, talking from the big cities in London in the country where there's been a lot of immigration and probably a lack of integration, more importantly.
Yes.
This problem is not something that is going to be experienced by people living in rural areas, and there are going to be parts of the population that will never experience this, and maybe they may not have had their eyes open to the problems of integration that are going on in the big cities of the UK. So I do understand where those figures are.
Yeah, and we are, of course, Mohit, an increasingly urbanised society. The last figures I saw suggested that only 13% of people lived in rural locations. So almost by definition now, Mohit, any opinion poll you get in this country will represent the view of the cities, won't it?
Well, absolutely. And obviously with migration, majority of these people want to live near the bigger cities, and that's something that was echoed by my grandparents when they came to this country. So listen, I'm not here to bash migration completely. What is more important than just migrating is whether you choose to learn English, integrate with society, understand British values, have a level of patriotism, have a gratefulness in your attitude with what the country gives you, the free education, the free healthcare. I think what's more important is the sentiment you have towards the land and the laws that are in place. So certain groups of people that may potentially come to this nation and not understand we have a democracy and a particular set of laws. And if there are people who know this and are constantly trying to change it and be rebellious against the laws of the land, then we have to ask the question, what is their motivation for being here?
Well, isn't this the ultimate resentment that people feel? That there are some groups in this country who actually want to change our cultures, our tradition, and our whole way of life. Isn't that the biggest single problem that we face in terms of our society?
This is the biggest problem, not just in the UK, but in any nation where migration is occurring. Every nation has its own culture and their own norms. And essentially, when you enter their norms, you have to abide by their rules to a certain extent, and where you feel a positive change can be brought about by your ways, then you do that in a democratic and civilized manner.
Yeah.
The Indian community and the Indian diaspora that has come to this nation over the last 50 years, on the whole, statistics will show you it's the most successful diaspora. And the reason for that, Nigel, is the ethos that they have, that not to walk around with a chip on their shoulder. My father and grandparents suffered a level of racism, but that does not give anyone the right to walk with a chip on their shoulder.
No, well, I wish
that as motivation to integrate, learn the language.
I wish, Mohit, I wish that everybody in your position felt as you do. Thank you. James in Norfolk says, Nigel, immigration is a good thing. Mass uncontrolled immigration is ruining the country. James, a lot of people feel like that. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Ukrainian officials say they staged a fake assassination of a Russian journalist to foil a real plot against him. Arkady Babchenko appeared at a news conference and apologised to his wife, friends and family, who all thought he was dead. A pilot's died after a helicopter crashed into a field in North Yorkshire. There were no other passengers on board when it came down near Aldborough, northeast of Harrogate, this afternoon. The Grenfell Tower inquiry has heard the final tributes from families of the 72 people who died. It's as 2 people who posed as victims have admitted falsely claiming benefits worth £125,000. LBC weather, heavy rain clearing into this evening to leave most places dry but still quite humid, cloudy with a risk of showers in Scotland, and in Northern Ireland a low of 11 degrees.
LBC travel. The M25 is slow clockwise between junction 22 for St Albans and 25 for Enfield, where a lane's closed because of an accident, and anti-clockwise on the M25. It's queuing between junction 12 for the M3 and 11 at Chertsey after an accident. Sidcup and Chislehurst Road is closed southbound just before Frognall Corner because of an accident. That's causing delays, and it's stop-start on the North Circular Road eastbound between the Coney Hatch interchange and 4th Street in Edmonton because of an accident. LBC Travel, I'm Charlotte Downs.
This is LBC.
LBC has been running a special report to highlight Dementia Action Week, thanks to Alzheimer's Society.
When you've got somebody who might have Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, just give them time. With a little patience, people can be included. They can feel better about day-to-day life.
Head to lbc.co.uk to find out more details about how all of us can play our part to help improve the everyday lives of people affected with dementia, thanks to Alzheimer's Society and LBC.
Ever had your milk delivered? As much as you need right to your doorstep? Well, that's kind of how blood works too. If you really needed some, you'd expect it just to be there, wouldn't you? Enough for you or me, your kids, your mum, or your neighbour. But we require nearly 700 new donors every day to give a pint, just to keep the country going. Bleed for the things that matter to us all. Join us at blood.co.uk. Save a life. Give blood.
OK, children, settle down. Thank you for bringing your pets in for Bring Your Pet to School Day. Megan, who is this delightful little ball of fur?
It's Trico, my guinea pig, miss.
Adorable. And Alfie, who's this?
It's Ronaldo, my rabbit, miss.
What a darling. And what's in the wooden crate, Poppy?
Fluffy.
That's a very strong lock. This way, children.
With a Land Rover Discovery, adventure can take you, well, anywhere. Never stop discovering. Search Land Rover Discovery. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Get the kettle on. Put the TV on. Turn the lights on. Turn the lights off. Put the dinner on. Turn the heating up. Turn the heating down. Crikey! We use so much energy every day, it's exhausting and expensive. But with a smart meter, you get an expected average saving of 354 kilowatt hours. That might not mean much, but if we all got one, we could save the same amount of energy as it takes to power Manchester, Liverpool and Newcastle for a year. Save your energy for powering cities. Contact your energy supplier about getting your free smart meter.
Based on BEI's expected average annual savings of 2%, participating suppliers and eligible customers only. Savings possible by measuring energy usage and reducing wastage.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, when up to 78% of the population say that immigration is harming their local communities, it's something we should be debating. And we are here tonight at LBC doing just that. And yet in Westminster, they don't discuss this subject anymore at all. But before I get back to that, Tommy Robinson, it's a name you will all have heard of, former leader of the English Defence League, and, you know, a very high-profile and controversial figure. And now I'm allowed to say it, because I've not been for a few days, which is ridiculous, and let me explain why. Tommy Robinson has been jailed for 13 months for contempt of court. And to many people, this is absolute proof that we're moving into a police state, that something truly awful is happening. Well, you've got half a point, folks, but only half a one. Let's be clear. Tommy Robinson was under a court order not to interfere with the judicial process in any way at all. He chose, for reasons of self-publicity, and not to benefit anything that would help society, he chose willfully to breach that. He was warned that he was in breach of that, decided to continue. Frankly, the judge had almost no choice but to give him a jail sentence. So I think Robinson, frankly, was out there asking for trouble, and I don't think it was a very bright thing to do. Now, against that, let me just say that there does appear to be a very strong desire and willingness amongst much of the police and our judiciary to clamp down on people who make certain criticisms in society. And we are not dealing here with a level playing field. The whole point about religious freedom and tolerance is we should all be able to criticise and even mock each other. And I do worry that we're moving into a position where you can criticise some groups in society but not criticise others. And I think for those of you who see Robinson as a hero, well, OK, maybe he does stand up for his point of view. But believe you me, his imprisonment in this case is not heroic in any way at all. And that, of course, will surprise some of you. But let me just say this finally. The fact we weren't allowed to talk about this for several days because of reporting restrictions is just a nonsense, because the internet has been awash with it. And the reason is the legislation covering reporting restrictions came in 1982 when, well, hardly anybody even had a computer back in 1982, let alone the internet. And we're in this ridiculous world where newspapers, television stations, radio stations are told, under reporting restrictions, they can't discuss some things, but out there on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, or whatever it is, there's a big open discussion going on. It's a nonsense, and I do feel that what I've just said about Robinson, I'd much rather have said at the end of last week than having to wait legally until today. Something fundamental needs to change with our reporting laws. The internet has changed the game. So maybe, just maybe, Parliament should wake up to that as well as the issue we're discussing tonight. Stephen on Facebook says, taking doctors and nurses from their own countries that need them is not right for those nations. Stephen, it's a point I've made many times. We're told immigration is good because so many nurses in the NHS come from foreign countries. Well, that's fine, and lots of them are absolutely wonderful. But if they're coming from countries like Mali or wherever it may be, maybe, just maybe, they're even more needed back where they come from. OK, let's go to John, a new caller from Belfast. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So, John, now Northern Ireland is somewhere that until recently had, and I think I'm right in saying this, minuscule levels of immigration.
Well, yeah, you could say that there, but like one of the callers said, if you go to the built-up areas, the main cities, like I can only speak for myself here in Belfast, so let me make that clear. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself because,
Sure.
how political us Irish people can be, or Northern Irish.
So the question, John, I'm asking people is, what have you witnessed in your community? But in some ways, I don't know, John, how old are you?
I'm 42.
42. So you did see a fair bit of your life with the Troubles, of course, going on around you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Bombs in the back country, bombs going off, killings, murders, daily routine, daily life.
Yeah. So in a sense, your community had been pretty fundamentally armed anyway, hadn't it?
Yeah, we had both Protestants and Catholics, though I'm an atheist, but I was brought up as a Protestant. So here in Northern Ireland, like, there was a cultural difference between two sets of white people based on religion, Catholic and Protestant. But as you know, since the peace process, we've been trying to bring ourselves together and move forward. Okay? Now, what's happened with since the peace process, we've had this flow of migrants or immigration, right? I've nothing against the people coming wanting to make better lives for themselves. That's fine. But when you go through the Troubles and then you're growing up in the peace process straight after, we are seeing a pace of change here, like unprecedented. We can actually see the impact of new people coming in on our schools, on our hospitals, on our doctor surgeries, dental surgeries. The lists are bigger. Like our school places, are fundamentally given more priority to people coming in.
Are you absolutely sure, John, that's happening?
Now, I can only speak for myself in my own area. I know that there's new housing developments being done, and they're being segmented into different things. So many for ethnic groups. Percentage of these houses go to an ethnic group. So much of a percentage go to another group. But the lowest percentage is given to the people who already live here.
Do I sense, John, a new resentment in Belfast? That where there was resentment between two different white groups from different religions, is there now a new resentment growing towards those that have come in recently?
Let me make it clear. Us Northern Irish people, we are not racist because we're not used to it. But this is a brand new thing for the people who have come up from the Troubles and now into the peace process. And the people in the baby boom since the peace process, these kids have no idea, and they're buying into the narrative that's being sold by the BBC. Okay? But we can clearly see the economic migration. We can clearly see that when they arrive here, they start having babies. And when they arrive here, they're getting benefits. And that's putting a lot of pressure on local services.
And John, you feel, in some ways, the potential harmony that the peace process would have created, although I do know Belfast, and there's still some quite big divisions there as well. But you feel immigration is not helping?
Basically, the division between us, the Catholics and Protestants, the IRA and the Loyalist paramilitary, it's still there. It's still deep in some of the older generations, and it hasn't been resolved.
No.
And now we're told to suck up new cultures, new identities, SJW people, and we're going, what the hell is going on? We haven't even solved their own problems.
Interesting.
And you're shoving this down our throat. I'll give you for instance, just a quick one. There's a primary school here, I won't name it, but I'm not blaming the individual, but one Muslim child, came into the school and they banned Halloween and they banned certain meat products from being served in that school because of one individual. So a whole culture had to change their way of life.
Yeah, and that's the wrong way round. John, very interesting phone call, thank you. And John is right in saying that the peace process has helped, but there are still problems in Belfast from the old Troubles. He seems to feel there are some new troubles coming too. Radoslav is a new caller from Elephant and Castle. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Pleasure to speak with you. How are you?
Good to speak. I'm very well. Now, Radoslav, I can tell that you may not have been born here. Is that a fair assumption?
That is correct. I came here 19 years ago from a country called Bulgaria.
Yep.
What I want to say that me being immigrant here for nearly 20 years, it's a great country to live in. I always can say is that immigrants, they can only do the good for the country. And Mr. Cameron's idea and proposal that every immigrant, the ones that should come now and work for 5 years before they being able to receive any benefits or any other help, it was absolutely great. And the EU actually, they agree with that. So I think, because I'm looking for myself, like I came 20 years ago and I was allowed only to work as a self-employed person. And guess what? I'm still working as a self-employed person.
Yeah, no, that's right. They were. That was the way, Radoslav, to get in, wasn't it? That was the way to get in, was to be self-employed. And the 5-year thing, well, Cameron got that from me. I said it was ludicrous that anybody should walk in and be able, before they paid anything into the system, to get any benefits. But Radoslav, in that 20 years that you've been here, many millions of new people have come, and 20 years ago, immigration was not even a debating point in this country, and it became this massive issue in the referendum.
Yeah,
and it's still. Just one sec. It's still a big issue out there in the community, even if politicians aren't discussing it. Would you agree with me, Vladislav, that the problem has been we've simply let too many people in too quickly?
Well, that's the thing. If that thing went through, like all the immigrants came here and have to work 5 years before they've been able to receive any benefits, that will turn them away. And you didn't have to go for a Brexit and, all this mess which happened after the vote.
All right.
Believe me, if any immigrants wants to come here, work for a year, sorry, it's not good for me. I can't claim any benefits. I'm not good. Go back.
Well,
very, very simple solution.
Well,
Plus,
we were certainly, Radoslav, seen as a soft touch. Listen, thank you for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive on LBC. It's now 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
MPs want to ban the use of cartoon characters in junk food marketing. Is this the kind of thing that really will make a difference?
Clive Bull on LBC.
LBC has been running a special report to highlight Dementia Action Week, thanks to Alzheimer's Society.
When you've got somebody who might have Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, just give them time. With a little patience, people can be included. They can feel better about day-to-day life.
Head to lbc.co.uk to find out more details about how all of us can play our part to help improve the everyday lives of people affected with dementia, thanks to Alzheimer's Society and LBC.
Time strides on, changing a child into a young person into an adult. So how cruel it is for time to be wasted. At our Serenity Home, we offer a 24-hour care service for young people who need constant supervision. But we fill those hours with emotional support, life skills, and family values. So 24-hour care means exactly that. Search for serenitywelfare.org. Serenity Welfare, nurturing young people.
Visit swaleheating.com and put your boiler in safe hands with Swale Heating's highly qualified engineers. Rely on us to keep you warm.
PPI. One question. Why have you still not checked if you're due a refund? Even if you don't know if you've had PPI, surely it's worth finding out. All Fast Track Reclaim needs is the name of your bank. No paperwork, no account numbers, just the name of your bank. We'll check PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. Find out now. Text YES to 82727. That's YES to 82727.
Fast Track Reclaim. Text YES to 82727.
Sponge cake, lemon cake, carrot cake, cupcakes, birthday cake, just basically cake. We love it. Whoever said you can't have your cake and eat it were just hopelessly unambitious and tragically misinformed. You can. And if you've got a smart meter, you could also save enough energy to bake 236 of them. Get your ovens on. We're having a bake-off. Save your energy for eating cake. Contact your energy supplier about getting your free smart meter.
Based on BEI's expected average annual savings of 2%, participating suppliers and eligible customers only. Savings possible by measuring energy usage and reducing wastage.
Mission Control, come in.
This is Mission Control. What can you see out there, Ted?
I can see the Great Wall of China, the Grand Canyon, and is that... No, it can't be. Car Giant. I can see Car Giant. Wow, it really is big.
Car Giant, the only place for giant car choice and giant car savings. Over.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
We're not coming at this from remotely the same angle. You clearly think that there's been a UK state abduction of 2 people on the streets of Salisbury. I think that's a crazy suggestion.
You can't even go around to take some women's magazines to her, could you? I don't think you're doing much of a job of journalistic by finding out nothing about her. And
Tell you what I'll do, I'll read some women's magazines and improve myself.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Well, extraordinary, isn't it? We wake this morning to hear the news that Arkady Babchenko has been murdered. He's a journalist. He's fled Russia. He's living in the Ukraine. He's a big critic of Putin, and all the global news media tell us that he has been murdered. Another foul crime that has been committed by the Putin regime. And then, this afternoon, at a press conference that was held by Ukraine's security service, guess what? Arkady walks into the room to be greeted by gasps. Now, was this the most extraordinary case of fake news that has ever been seen? I don't know. We were told by the head of the Ukraine's security services that the murder had been staged after the Ukraine learnt of a Russian plot to kill the journalist so they could find out who was trying to do it. I have absolutely no idea what to believe about this story, but there's one comment from the press conference that stands out, where Arkady says, "Special apologies to my wife." So he hadn't told her that all of this was going to happen. I mean, some of you out there, may have got home late from the pub once or twice and had to explain yourselves. Talk your way out of that one. Goodness gracious me. So we're back to the elephant in the room of British politics, the thing that nobody wants to talk about because they might be thought of as being horrible and nasty and not get invited to the right dinner parties in Notting Hill. Yup, it's immigration. And the amazing figure that up to 78% of people living in areas of high migration think it's actually harmed their societies. I'm asking you why you think that. Alan in Belfast says, "I'm from Belfast, in my late 40s. I want to back up everything John said." And John said, since the end of the Troubles, there have been some really fundamental changes in Belfast and a new kind of growing resentment. Nigel, we used to have neighbourhoods which included everyone in the area. Now we have communities. Yeah, absolutely. Now we have communities which rarely mix, says Janice in Hornchurch. And I did pick up one of our callers earlier on today who identified himself as being from one of the communities. And when I pressed him, he didn't feel he was part of any community at all. He felt he was British. I do think that actually much of this has been encouraged by the state over the course of the last few decades. Stay part of your community. Keep your original culture. Well, what about actually integrating and getting on with our culture? Wouldn't that really have been a better approach to take? Some of you may think that's an old-fashioned view, but it's the one that I hold, and I think, looking at these numbers, it's the view that a majority of the British people hold too. I'm going to go to David, who's calling from Marlow. Good evening, David.
Hi, Nigel. I just want to pick up on that community.
Yes,
point.
yes.
Speaking as somebody, I'm the only white person in my family, so I'm in the pink-skinned community.
Right. Where's this going? Right, okay.
And the rest of my lot are in some other community.
Right. So do you feel discriminated? Do you, David, feel discriminated against because you're different?
Well, it is laughable, in fact, because, of course, this notion that people exist in a community, or automatically put into a community by white middle-class liberals. Let's face it, it's a sort of a, it's been conjured up by, like you said, the sort of couple of decades of white middle-class liberalism. And, of course, so now people are judged by the colour of their skin, not the content of their character. Somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Whereas the very same people would be worshipping at the feet of Martin Luther King Jr., and, sort of hanging on every word he said, and yet they are doing exactly what he asked them not to do.
Yes, you know what? It's a very, very good point. They're doing exactly that, aren't they? But why, David? Why this desire? Why this liberal elite desire to park us all in communities and keep us all separate? What?
Because I can tell you exactly why, Nigel.
Yeah, do.
They are paralysed by political correctness.
Mm.
They are terrified of upsetting anybody.
Mm.
So rather than say, you're a human being,
yep.
You're a person, I don't care where you come from, it doesn't matter to me, I have no right to ask where your parents have come from, because let me tell you, in my experience, people in my family are regularly asked by white people in this country. They're saying, "Where are you from?" "I'm from here." Well, no, where are you actually from?
I know.
From here. No, okay, so where are your parents from? I'm sorry, you don't have the right to ask that question.
OK, David, I wish you luck living as a minority. It seems to me you're doing pretty well in your position. And again, this point coming up again and again, this whole question of people being from this community or that community. It's a big part of this problem, in my view. Nigel, it costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to train one doctor. It's cheaper to get them from other countries. Diana, I said tonight, we're not trying to measure the success or failure of a country by whether our GDP figures are up a little bit or down a little bit. We're talking about communities. And maybe that doctor, Diana, that we've picked up from an African country or somewhere else, they may well have really, really badly been needed there. I do think that point actually matters, and I'm amazed that more people don't make it. Carmen is a new caller from Sutton Coldfield. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. So tell me, Carmen, I was told I shouldn't ask this question, but are you an immigrant or not?
Well, I believe technically I am, yes.
Technically, right, okay.
But I'm one of the happy ones.
Good.
So everything's gone well. I'm originally from Estonia. I've been here about 5.5 years.
Okay.
So I've got a very positive experience. I mean, every now and again, someone calls me Eastern European and puts me sort of in that bracket, so people do judge.
You're not Eastern European, you're from the Baltic states.
Oh, that's a compliment. Well, it's still these two blocks, isn't it? But yeah, what I wanted to say, obviously, I feel that immigration is, I think that it needs to be capped. Obviously, I came in, I had my opportunities, and I've made my way, so I'm doing relatively well. I'm in my mid-20s. I came around when I was 20. Whereas obviously other people might come in and abuse that. I came in initially, it took me 3 months to find a job. People were telling me, just claim, you get a bit of support financially. And I said, well, I've come here knowing that I'm not going to find a job on day one. So it's going to take me it's going to take me some time to find what I want. So I will pay for that because that is an investment into my future. And I refuse to claim for anything.
What interests me is you self-identify as a happy immigrant, and it sounds like it's going pretty well, which is great. Do you understand why this opinion poll out from Demos today shows there are so many people worried that immigration has divided their local communities?
No, I do understand it, and from coming from Estonia, obviously with a lot of first, second, now even third generation Russians in there.
Yep.
I think it's very important to adapt to where you go, because around here, if I see a Polish community or different communities, different areas, I think that's wrong, because you don't come to another country to, speak your language and live in your culture, which is much of what we've got in Estonia with Russians having their own schools. Russian is not an official language in Estonia, but they have their own schools, they have their own education, and even if they understand Estonian, they refuse to speak it. So I think with the communities in the UK, it's partially going the same way. There's a lot of people that have lived here for 10 odd years and they still don't properly speak the language.
Too many communities, Carmen. Too many communities. Listen, Carmen, thank you very much indeed for your call. Thank you, all of you, for your call. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is the elephant in the room of British politics. If Boris and co and all the posh Brexiteers think this issue has simply gone away, they are absolutely wrong. People care about it, and they care about it hugely. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show. I'll be back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. At 9, it's the Legal Hour, and we're going to be talking about the law on nuisance calls and what you can do about them. Also later, the Transport Secretary Chris Grayling has admitted today that the rail industry has failed passengers over the introduction of new timetables. Why did it all go wrong? Maybe it was his fault. And the Russian journalist who came back from the dead. We'll have more on that. But we start with news that the government is poised to tackle child obesity with an advertising ban and a ban on the use of cartoon characters in junk food marketing. Is this the kind of thing that really will make a difference? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on your phone, and here.
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, a Russian journalist reported murdered in Ukraine yesterday has appeared at a news conference alive. Police had said Arkady Babchenko, a strong critic of President Putin, was found shot dead at his apartment in Kiev. Mr. Babchenko has apologised to those mourning him, including his wife, saying the faked assassination was necessary to disrupt a genuine plot to kill him. He explained to startled reporters how he worked with Ukrainian authorities.
Over this month, we were in constant contact. We thought things through and worked out the details. The result of that became this special operation, as a result of which one person has been detained.
The chairman of the Grenfell Tower inquiry has vowed to provide answers to victims' families after hearing tributes to those who died. A week of commemorations has ended with 72 seconds of silence. Today's proceedings heard the families of the final 6 victims, including the sister of Raymond Moses Bernard, who sheltered 6 people in his top-floor flat.
As there was no way down to escape, the only alternative was to head towards the top floor. There they met Ray and took refuge in his flat. We know that he would have given comfort to each of them.
It's as a man and a woman who claimed they lived on the 19th floor to get thousands of pounds meant for victims of the fire have admitted fraud. Elaine Douglas and Tommy Brooks from Jamaica were put up in luxury hotels for nearly a year following the disaster. The Islamic State group has claimed the man who killed 4 people in Belgium this week was a soldier of the Caliphate. 2 police officers were among those killed by Benjamin Herman in Liège. Officers are investigating whether he acted alone or was planning more attacks. One person has been killed in a helicopter crash in North Yorkshire. It came down this afternoon near the village of Adelborough, northeast of Harrogate. Superintendent David Hannon is from North Yorkshire Police.
One person, the pilot, is